We are very pleased to have American filmmaker Craig Baldwin here with us today, who's currently touring Europe. Would you say, Craig?
That's for sure. Yeah.
And you're doing workshops,
Screenings, panels, workshops, and a conference, by the way, and actually a festival.
And you've just brought out your new film.
Lock Up on Moo.
What can you say about your new film?
Well, it's what I'm calling a collage narrative. Certainly it does what a lot of my earlier films try to do, which is tell a certain kind of history. The theme, in very broad terms, is sort of autonomy versus control. But what would be distinctive about this one is that I've tried to couch these themes within a larger narrative arc. It's not just a collage for its own sake. It's like an ongoing montage, but actually it has characters in it, and they have kind of dialogue and relations and so on and so forth. So in a way, it's my most narrative film. That's for sure.
But in contrast to the Spectres of the Spectrum, would it be a post-quel or a prequel?
It's actually a prequel of Spectres, yes. And you could actually say that the Spectres is a collage narrative if you've seen it. But the point is that in the new one, Moo, there's a lot more development in terms of the psychology of the characters, and they have more depth, and it rings a little bit more true, shall we say, to anthropomorphic expectations. It's less completely and absolutely didactic.
How do you come up with the ideas for your films? For example, Spectres of the Spectrum has a narrative going through it. Your earlier films very kind of visually based, would you say, or how do your films now differ to your earlier films?
It's true that earlier on I was interested in just more visual play and a visual collage, something more closer to a John Hartfield, to a provocation through imagery and gesture. But increasingly, I felt I had to avail myself of language, basically. And it would be fine to make a short film that's formal, whatever, that's on the surface, that's a play of colors, and forms. But sooner or later, if you want to actually do something that's more analytical, investigative, to take research materials and make it available to an audience, then it's hard to avoid the use of language. One could do a voiceover, which I've done, and one could use intertitles, which I've done. But sooner or later, in my case, I was drawn to at least using schematic characters as carriers of the argument. I call it a sort of a puppet show, in a way. So we do have people in my movie, but you don't necessarily have to suspend, let's put it this way, your disbelief. You see that they are, actors within a kind of a larger play. But there's resolution, and there's conflict, and there's a little bit more that comes from theater or drama in the play. So back to your original part of your question, yes, my films are generally around certain kinds of historical issues of power, that's for sure. But again, I don't just lay those arguments on the table nakedly. What I like to do is, again, couch them in aesthetic initiatives like collage, or narrative initiatives like this idea of family, or a saga, or an epic, or like a fairy tale.
Are your films part of your inner landscape as well?
They sure are. Well, they could hardly not be. Well, first of all, the kind of level of fantasy and imagination needed to really solve problems, narrative problems, is something that kind of one has to think through, if that's what you mean by inner landscape. If you mean by reflecting my what a belief system or cosmology, then I couldn't give you an answer to that. I don't know if I have one. But what I mean is, they are products of my imagination, if that's what you mean, for sure. There's not just, just go out and read a book about Coronado, for example. I made a film about the the so-called conquest of the Southwest in the United States in not 1492, but a few years after that. But I mean, I did that. But the thing is, to bring it to cinema, that you have to visualize it. See what I mean? So where do those ideas come from? Well, a lot of it has to do with visualization, with thinking up a picture, with creating a mise en scène, with taking a chance on a set of gestures that tell the story. So I don't know, like I say, if that's what you mean by my inner landscape or whatever, but it really has to do. Imagination is the word. I don't want to forfeit that part of filmmaking. You know what I mean? I feel it's important to have some kind of fantasy action going on.
Yeah. Can you imagine someone making a film about your life? Would you like that?
My life?
Yeah.
Oh, I would be embarrassed to do that, because I'm actually a white middle class kind of guy. You know what I mean? I mean, ultimately, I would feel it's very serving, and that it wasn't really taking the opportunity to address larger issues. You know what I mean? I don't think I'm all that really extraordinary, to be honest with you. There's a million people like me who are just little wankers who are just playing around with, in my case, images. Could be a musician or a poet or whatever. So. Petty bourgeois, blah blah blah. No, I think that you should raise the stakes up a little bit higher. I'm not into this, reality TV kind of thing. Sure, you can make a movie about the person who just walked by. If you want to make a movie, but I think you can come up with a better subject than that. You know what I mean?
How do you come up with the ideas for your films? Are they? Do you think they're part of you, or do they come from elsewhere?
Well, yes. Well, you kind of asked that before. The thing is, there's a set of issues that I'm driven by, that's for sure. Again, not that I had this inspiration, I saw what my movies had to be about, just the kind of things that I'm committed to. You could say democracy, again, that's sort of a generalized, vague term. But this idea, what would make for a good movie, I think, is when you have, kind of a certain kind of argument or a certain kind of conflict. So all my movies really are about, generally, the idea of control. Autonomy, really, and it's not hard to come up with a million examples of that. But I would say 4 out of 7 movies really came to the front page of a paper, where I saw a story that was just begging to be made. So it's not like, after making that whole pitch about the imagination, it's not like I have to cook up, see what I mean, a fiction. Go down to Hollywood, rent a room, drink a lot of coffee or whatever it is, you know what I mean, it takes, and then, sort of, carve out a romantic comedy. Oh yeah, develop this character. Yeah, that would be good. It doesn't work that way at all. I mean, my thing is more about taking something that exists really in the world, and then again using imagination to mold it into a work of art kind of thing. So really, not from within me, but obviously I have to be receptive to a good story, and it's something that has that kind of architecture and conflict and tension within it. You know what I mean? That's why my movies are sort of collagey, because they do kind of work out these sets of tensions.
Do you dream about your movies?
No. Not really. More after the fact. When you make a movie, you would know this if you were a maker. You end up dreaming about the production, because there's a lot of just repetition. You know what I mean? Doing this, seeing the scene. And when I saw my own movie, whatever it was 2 nights ago, my lips were going like this. Every word out of the script, I was speaking along with. So there you go. I don't know if that's a dream or not. What I mean is that these ideas become very internalized. But just to flip it, what I'm saying is that if you're trying to draw out from me whether this is some product of some inner child or inner vision, no. Like I say, it's really an outside in. I'm less interested in that. I want to get away from that indulgence of my tortured soul. That's just my attitude.
But mock-up on Moo deals with Aleister Crowley and other people like L. Ron Hubbard. What's your interest in the occult or hidden knowledge, would you say?
Okay, that's a good question. I don't believe really in most of the religious aspects of whatever that might be, metaphysical aspect. I'm a dialectical materialist, just so you know. I'm interested in the fact of cults. I'm interested in flying saucers. I don't necessarily believe in flying saucers, but flying saucers or an urban legend. They're part of a system of belief that have a presence. They're powerful or active. You know what I mean? So I like this idea of illusion or false consciousness, as it used to be called. I'm interested in this, and this is something that's not to be avoided. Again, like a more a didactic filmmaker wouldn't lower him or herself to this concern with the frivolous or whatever, or the just wrong-headed or unscientific. I certainly agree it's unscientific, but I like the idea of exploring the human need for whatever escape or belief or faith, or you know what I mean. So that's why that's why I'm drawn to people's the ways that they deceive themselves, to deception. Yeah, my film. I'm very much interested in the occult as this idea of the secret. Not so much the content of the secret, but the fact the sort of psychological and social organizations around secrets. See, so. That's an interesting social formation, occult groups, whatever, and or conspiracies, So I kind of like that. I kind of like exploring the power relations, let's say.
So why did you choose Aleister Crowley?
Well, Crowley because of the historical fact of it. Again, it's not because I'm mad about Crowley. It's because Crowley was why would I be interested in Lee Harvey Oswald, which I'm very interested in. I don't know if you know who he is, but he was the guy, who shot Kennedy. So that's why I'm interested in Lee Harvey Oswald. There's a lot of Lee Harvey Oswalds out there. Well, I mean, fewer Crowleys, but I mean, Crowley was the guy who set up the OTO, which had the big effect on so many people. My roommate, for that matter, but millions of people. Let's face it, around the world, UK as well, and in California, and Jack Parsons. And my whole story comes by way of the aerospace. What would it be? A sort of historical commentary on individuals within the aerospace industry, really. And the Crowley was an influence on those people. That's how I came to Crowley. I didn't start with Crowley. Then it would be like a fan movie about Crowley. Same thing with Sonic Outlaws, if you ever saw this other film. Well, it ends up being about Negativland.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't make a fan movie about Negativland, even though I liked their music. It was about the issue of copying and sampling, so I mean, and copyright violation and so on and so forth. So, and they were someone who was in court. So, don't say that's how they came to be the subject of my movie. So, there was always there's larger issue. Not to say I'm better than other makers, but I'm saying that the way I go about it is there's generally a kind of a larger thematic arc, and then there's people on the ground that enact, embody, and live out these contradictions and these tensions, right? That's why when I read about it in the paper, it's a iteration. You know what I mean? It's an example. I say that's it. There's a demonstration of it. There's a story that really happened. I didn't have to make it up. I'm interested in making that argument, and here's somebody who's lived it out. And so then that's kind of the meat of it. You see what I mean?
So, for example, in Sonic Outlaws, this was the case with Negative Land and U2, wasn't it?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. It was like a lightning bolt went off. It wasn't actually when the court case that actually about a year before, but it was actually at it happened to be at a writers thing, and the Don Joyce, that's just another name that you might not recognize, but basically the sort of the ideologue in the guy who does a lot of the writing for Negativland. He read this. He read this manifesto. And I was invited because I had made this earlier film, Tribulation. So I did the thing with film, and then he read this manifesto. And then a good friend of mine, who was the guest editor of a law review at a law school right down the street from this club, and his whole issue had been intellectual property. So he happened to be there at this event, handing out copies of his law review. So that's when the stars aligned. See. So, in other words, Negativland is one case, but there's a million cases. But the thing is that these things could happen at that moment. That's when the lightning bolt struck my cerebellum.
So you knew that was you would make the film.
Yeah. I mean, the ideas are good. There's an argument there. It's good. Like I say, it's a good piece of content. But the thing is, that was the epiphany. You know what I mean? Where I saw that yes, I have it wasn't just academic. I have a personal stake in this, and this is kind of not magical, but there's something charmed about this